let's get things off with Coach Tippmann here from Snider High School. Kurt, glad you can be with us tonight. Appreciate you coming on here, even it's the holidays, so to speak. Um, Big start for you guys. I think we all knew what Buchanan gave you as a running back in terms of his ability, big size, some speed. But you've really got production out of Billingsley, both running and throwing. Kind of talk about his maturity level here through the first two ball games of the year.
Well, Kieran he's been a quarterback since he showed up as a freshman. But then as he, got a little older and he was behind Hopper last 2 years, he's a good enough athlete. We needed to get him on the field at other places. So, to continue to learn the offense, he played receiver and, still got some, we put him in the game at some crucial times last year just to, that backup guy, we really didn't think of him as a backup, but just he needed to get some of those reps. And I think, when you do that, everybody says, "What the heck are you doing putting the backup quarterback in?" Well, he really wasn't a backup. He's a very viable um, player last year in our offense, and we were just kind of giving him a different role. But to give him that kind of experience in the, it's one thing to do it at the end of the game when the score's kind of already decided, but to give him reps and give him time when the game's still in balance, I think those are invaluable. And I think his hot start, I think, can be attributed a little bit to he has experience, and he was in some of the fray last year as a junior and under center or running the offense, and he looks very very comfortable. He didn't get rattled at all. That first game down in Indianapolis, and everybody in Fort Wayne saw Warren Central had some dudes on defense when they played Carroll up here, but he didn't get rattled. They kind of punched us in the mouth in the first quarter down there, and Kieran was the leader in just staying the course, not panicking, not having to change a bunch of stuff, just settle down, and ended up making some really big plays in that game to lead our offense. But his development has kind of been on course with what we've seen from him all along. He's a very calm, cool, collected kid, and he's a point guard in basketball, runs track, three-sport athlete that doesn't get rattled by all this. He's been a competitor, and I think that's one of the selling points of being a three-sport athlete. They're competitors. They compete, and there's just no substitute for competing, whether it be bringing the ball up the court when the score's tied in the fourth quarter and you got to get a bucket, or we ran in the state meet in the 4x100 and track. Those experiences you just can't duplicate, and it's, I think, showing for him and our offense here early in the season.
Well, the other positions that you've been getting some great production out, of course, is running back with Uriah Buchanan, and then of course Ganaway on the outside. Those have kind of been the other two big bodies out there. What about their? Tell us a little bit about their production, and how they fared this thus far for you in terms of kind of how you would have seen them getting the ball and kind of trying to target them to get them the football as being those guys that are going to make plays for you.
Well, Uriah was a key part of the offense last year. Kind of shared time with Langston. Langston got the majority of the load, and really when it came down to determining time in the offense, the senior was in there, but Uriah was very capable. Um, I think Lettuce did the majority of the work in the Homestead game, which was a really close game last year, and so we knew he was very capable. And then to watch him work in the off season has really been phenomenal. I mean, from the time we started doing some things in the spring, he was out there designing drills on his own or with Coach Davis. He's an ultimate worker and very very dedicated to working on his craft, and has one of the coolest things to see as a coach is when he makes some of these great cuts in the Warren game or the East Noble game, you see those same things of what he'd been working on the field in practices in the spring and the summer, kind of on his own. You see it show up on the field, and just a credit to his tremendous work ethic. So, he's a very capable guy, and we're always going to begin our offense with being able to run the ball. We believe firmly that if you're going to win in November, better be able to stop the run and better be able to run the ball. Weather in Indiana is such that you got to be able to run the ball, and I think with that being our mantra, he's taken the lead and being the kind of the point man with the running game. But then, in the receiving core, we lost three really, really good receivers last year. And with the quarterback, we were able to chuck it around last year, and three senior receivers, and Kedrell Billingsley and um, Kamari and Jordan Lee. Those guys were very experienced and very successful. And so bringing three new guys and four new guys, that haven't had much experience. Austin, you mentioned Ganaway, he was one of our safeties last year. So he was on the other side of the ball. And just because of weight, we need to move some guys around. He's kind of looked at home over there at receiver, and has added another dimension. He's a tall, big kid with good hands and good speed. And then Boston Conley is a kid that has worked 3 years as a receiver in the offense and kind of bided his time. And as typical with a lot of kids, their senior year, it's time for them to shine, and has really stepped up. Had a nice touchdown catch Friday night against Concordia. And then at the other spot, we have a new kid, John Stegmeyer, who is has been an all conference, maybe an all state soccer player the last 3 years. And had decided coming into his senior year that he wanted to try football. Played as a young kid, but when in the high school season, soccer and football conflict, and so chose soccer. But has tremendous speed, tremendous athleticism, and wanted to try soccer, and has been a great addition to us out on the perimeter. Is deceivingly fast. He probably, in our top three in terms of speed on the whole team. And then a junior, Trevor, is the fourth guy that kind of shares time there. And, the four of those guys together have really shown the ability to run the offense and execute the passing game to a good level that has allowed us to be successful.
Sure. Head coach for Snider, Kurt Tippmann, joining us tonight on Upon Further Review. Coach, your defense too, all season long, the big win at Warren Central and following that up, and just looking East Noble, a clash up there. Then you take care of business at Concordia. Just talk about that unit and what they've been able to do so far. We know about Brandon Logan. We're starting to hear his name more. Levi Oberholzer, another name that somebody told me hey, watch out for this kid in the secondary, that linebacker core with Lucas Rohrbacher. Just talk about that Snider defense, that was able to really look strong on Friday night, get that first string group of guys get their work done early, but ultimately too, just all season long, that part of the success for the Snider Panthers so far.
Well, going into the season, we had some returning guys at all three levels on the D line with Will Kelso, and then at linebacker with Lucas. And then in the secondary with Brandon Logan, and Levi played a lot for us last year too. So we had experience at all three levels, but then, lost some really talented players as well. So we had a lot of question marks in terms of how we were going to be. We knew we'd be fast, maybe a little undersized, but speed and we designed our scheme to try to take advantage of some of our speed. And try to compensate for some of our lack of size. We're not going to be 270 pounds, in the interior like maybe some of the years we've had in the past. So, going into the Warren Central game, had lots of question marks. And really, with Warren Central returning what was a really, really good offensive line. I think they had 4 of their 5 guys coming back, from an offense last year that ran the ball very well in the MIC and just, really, really good up front. We knew we'd get a lot of those questions answered in week 1. And our guys weren't overpowering, but what they did was just play good, fundamental, sound gap defense. If I'm a defensive tackle and I had to get to this particular gap, the guys got there and defended that gap. And, we really played good, sound team defense. Nobody out of position, nobody getting overwhelmed on the line of scrimmage, and just holding gaps and holding to positions to where they needed to be so that the 11 guys could kind of work together. And, that was the most pleasing aspect of that first game defensively, was just not getting overwhelmed by a really, really good offensive line and playing good, sound gap defense. And, we continue to run to the ball well. And, our secondary guys were flying around and kind of got tested in the same way against East Noble. East Noble's a big physical, run the ball kind of offense, and kind of do some different things, try to, schematically get some advantages with some of the formations they use and motions and things like that, and required a bunch of adjustments by the defensive guys and learning some of those things in a week game plan. And again, our guys responded well to that challenge and, did a good job in what I think is a really good offense in East Noble, and both being able to run the ball and throw the ball. I think they're very capable of both and going to be a force in that conference, offensively, and did a good job of that. And we've always thought we're going to have some speed, and we got some guys that can play in the back end. And Jamarion, I think, showed that Friday night with 2 interceptions, just really tight coverage, and has a great ability to play the ball. One of those really good ball skills. And Brandon and Levi back there at the safety position, do a good job of disguising things, and then, can break on the ball and make some really special plays. So they're leading us back there. And I think it's a defense that's going to have to play fast and have to employ a lot of scheme to combat some of the size disadvantages. But I think that, that's kind of the way we want to play. We want to play with speed, and, I'd rather be fast than big and slow at any time. Defensively. So I think it allows us to have a lot more variety in what we're doing schematically on defense.
Sure. So for you, Coach, too, a lot has been made about and we kind of talked about it preseason a little bit too, but the SAC, the non-conference slate. For you, picking Warren Central and East Noble, you were one of the first teams that seemed like to come out and say, "Oh, we found our opponents." Why was it so important for you, as the Snider Panthers and your coaching staff and the players, in a program to go out and get those 2 teams right off the bat, non-conference play, a team like Warren Central? What was it about that matchup that you guys felt we need a game like that off the bat, and the success that came out of it, obviously?
Well, we wanted to find, we wanted to play the best teams in the state. I mean, honestly, that was our goal, to schedule, what we think are the best teams in the state. And so, when that schedule first opened up, we emailed and contacted all the teams in the MIC and all the teams in the conference with Westfield and Hamilton Southeastern, Fishers, and those schools, because in my opinion, the 6A state champions have come out of those 2 conferences, or the teams playing in the state championship have come out of those 2 conferences, since the 6A was really formed. And, we've had experience playing them. We played Lawrence Central in the state championship in 2012. We've played Ben Davis. We've played Warren Central. We've played Carmel many times in the regional. We've played Hamilton Southeastern and Fishers, and just, know those programs and know how good they are, and knew that it would be a great way of measuring and finding out, where we were as a team, in a week 1 or week 2 matchup, getting ready for a conference schedule. I think when you play really well-coached teams that are also talented, the talent's part of that too, because all your mistakes get accentuated when and exaggerated when you're playing a team that's well coached and talent. You can make some mistakes against lesser teams and they're not as visible, they're not as apparent. But when you play a really well coached team that has talent, all those things get exaggerated and kind of make it easy for you to identify the things you're not very good at. And that was our goal. And, additionally, any other program that was just well coached and, the programs that do a good job year in and year out, they're always going to be well prepared. And I think we found that in both Warren Central and East Noble. And, it wasn't like we had the pick of everybody. There were a lot of places we contacted that their contracts were in different years. So there wasn't the availability. If you remember when that happened, at the same time, the MIC was kind of going through a change with Center Grove and Carmel, and so they weren't sure if their schedules were going to change, if their week ones and week twos were going to be open or not. So there was some delay in a lot of the availability of some of those MIC teams, and Warren Central week one was scheduled to play, and they had been playing Center Grove, but then when Center Grove left the conference, that's what allowed us to get in there, and it worked out really well. And I think, win or lose, going, we also wanted a place where we could travel. We just don't travel in our conference schedule, and then you get to the playoffs and having to go to a Mishawaka or a Valpo or someplace like that up in Maryville. We don't want that to be our first road trip, and going to Northside 5 minutes away or to Dwenger 3 minutes away, it just isn't the same as getting on the bus and going for 2 hours. So we also wanted to experience a road trip. Now, we didn't plan on having both games be road trips, but that's just kind of the way it worked out.
Yeah.
But I think that'll pay dividends for us down the road, just having that experience, and having done that at least once or twice, all points towards being our best week 10 when we start playing, in the playoffs.
Certainly. Well, it's paid off for you so far, Coach. The Snider Panthers up to number 1 in Class 5A in both polls and off to a 3-0 start. They host you first home game of the season this Friday night after 3 road games as you welcome the Southside Archers into town. And we want to thank you for joining us tonight, Coach, and best of luck the rest of the season. I'm sure we'll talk to you and some of your players throughout the rest of the year, and we'll certainly keep our eye on Snider.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, guys.